Welcome to Chapter 4, Sociological Views of Delinquency. Let me go ahead and get our presentation started. So we are talking about social factors and delinquency. What are those social factors that are influencing delinquency? And so we're going to talk about in this chapter, about what the causes of juvenile delinquency are and how they can be related back to sociology and social factors. So interpersonal interactions is social relationships with families, peers, schools, jobs, criminal justice agencies, and the like. And we know that they play an important role in shaping behavioral choices. Social conditions, that can be like political unrest, mistrust, economic stress, family disintegration. Those are all social changes that precede increases in crime rates. Poverty, of course. Poverty is huge. We know that our government estimates that there are now 46 million Americans living in poverty, and that's going to be defined as a family of four earning about $23,000 per year. They suffer socially and economically as a result. Racial disparity. So racial disparity is we know that the median family income of Latinos and African Americans is 2/3 that of whites, and the percentage of racial and ethnic minorities living in poverty is double that of European Americans. About 28% of African Americans are living at the poverty level in comparison to 11% of non-Hispanic whites. So there are three main sociological theoretical groups that we are going to talk about today. That's social structure theories, social process theories, and critical theories. So we'll start with social structure theories. The phrase culture of poverty was coined by Oscar Lewis, and it is marked by apathy, cynicism, helplessness, and mistrust of institutions. And that's going to be like the police and the government. And there's this creation of this permanent underclass whose members have little chance of upward mobility or improvement and is related to psychological maladjustment, low self-esteem, depression, loneliness. So the social structure theory suggests that social and economic forces operating in deteriorated lower class areas, including disorganization, stress, and cultural deviance, push these residents into criminal behavior and patterns. Social disorganization was first recognized early in the 20th century in neighborhoods marked by cultural conflict, lack of cohesiveness, insufficient social organizations. Transitional neighborhoods are areas that were undergoing a shift in population, usually from middle class to lower class. So cultural transmission was this process of passing on deviant traditions and delinquent values from one generation to the next. And social control referred to the ability of social institutions to influence human behavior. The justice system is a primary agency of formal social control. Now, the term relative deprivation exists when people of wealth and poverty live in close proximity to one another. Now, Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay, this was the Chicago School, and they came up with a couple of more terms that are important. And so we talked about areas that were gentrified, and it had built this community fear. And so we knew that poverty then would become concentrated to specific areas that were important. Of course, collective efficiency, which was this process of trust and these willingness to intervene into the supervision of children. So you'll see this is a good graphic on the cycle of social disorganization. You might want to keep a copy of this handy. So that brings us to strain. And strain is a condition that's caused by the failure to achieve one's specific goals. So Merton came up with this anomy term, which is pretty much the same thing as strain theory. And what it said is that inhabitants of a disorganized inner city area feel isolated, frustrated, ostracized from the economic mainstream. This makes them hopeless and eventually angry. And these are what signs of what sociologists call strain. So Merton adopted the concept of strain to explain crime and delinquency. And he argued that although most people share common values and goals, the means for legitimate economic and social success are stratified by socioeconomic class. Without acceptable means for obtaining success, individuals feel social and psychological strain, or anomy. So, super important term. I think it's very telling of something that we see in our communities. So, Robert Agnew talked about general strain and what those sources of strain were and some of those negative affective states that we talked about. So, cultural deviance theory was where lower class values in conflict with those of larger society. So, the values that were important in those lower classes was different than what larger society said was valuable. So, that brings us to social process theories. And socialization is a process of learning the values and norms of the society or the subculture to which the individual belongs. So that can include quite a few different relationships. Family is really the primary influence in children's lives and of socialization. And if it's inadequate, this process can be interrupted and damaged. Parents are really thought to have this parental efficacy when they are supportive and effectively control their children in non-coercive fashions. So we know that school, these slides get all kind of wonky. School is also important. There's an extensive research that links delinquency to poor school performance. We also know that peers or youths who become involved with peers who engage in antisocial behavior or hold antisocial attitudes may be deeply influenced by negative peer pressure. So how does socialization influence delinquency? And while social process theories agree that these elements of socialization affect delinquency, they may interpret the association in different ways through learning, control, and labeling. And social learning theories hold that children living in even the most deteriorated areas can resist inducements to crime if they have learned proper values and behavior. Edward Sutherland gives us the differential association theory, and it asserts that criminal behavior is learned primarily in our interpersonal groups, and that youths will become delinquent if they learn through being more exposed to breaking the law than following the law. So social control theory suggests that delinquency results from this weakened commitment to major social institutions, family, peers, schools. So social bonds ties a person to these institutions and the processes of society. So 4 main elements that we are looking at when we talk about social bond is attachment, commitment, involvement, and beliefs. And those come from social bond theory, Travis Hershey. So I want to talk about labeling theory. This is another really important one that I am a firm believer in. And we know that experts believe that the way society reacts to individuals and the way individuals react to society determines individual behavior. So becoming stigmatized or labeled by agents of social control or official institutions such as police and the courts, and unofficial institutions like parents and neighbors can create and sustain delinquent careers. Labeling theory posits that society creates deviance through a system of social control agencies. They designate, they label certain individuals as delinquent, and that is stigmatizing them, and it almost acts like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, moving on. Critical theory. So society is in a constant state of internal conflict. Different groups impose their will on others, and those with money and power shape the law to meet their needs and to maintain their interests. Law and justice. Critical theorists view the law and justice system as vehicles for controlling the have-not members of society. Legal institutions help the powerful and rich impose their standards of good behavior on the entire society. Really, the cause of delinquency, if we're looking at critical theory, is viewing delinquency as a normal response to conditions that have been created by capitalism. So social programs have been designed to reduce or eliminate delinquency. Social process theories and delinquency prevention suggest that delinquency can be prevented by strengthening socialization process. So that is creating prevention programs, and those programs can be aimed at strengthening families in crisis. They can also reduce labeling and stigma, deinstitutionalization, removing juveniles from adult jails, placing them in community-based programs, starting to avoid stigmas that can be attached to those facilities. Giving them a job. Homeboy Industries in LA was founded in 1992. And really a guiding principle of that program was that employed people lead happy lives. And they're constructive and productive, and that will help keep kids out of crime. So restorative justice is another approach, and that's a non-punitive strategy. And what it involves is offender accountability, competency development, and community protection. And we will learn more about restorative justice as we move on towards throughout this class. I would say that restorative justice would be an excellent research topic for your final project. Just something to keep in mind. All right, that does it for Chapter 4. Have a great day.